Hi guys, and welcome to A.F.C. Curtis. I'm your host Curtis, and on today's episode I'm pretty excited about this one actually. We're talking about the 7 coaches in the Canadian Premier League. So if you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you want to see more content just like this one on just like this video on Canadian Premier League, maybe consider hitting that red subscribe button. Now, we're going to start here with the very first ever coach announced, and that very first coach announced was Tommy Wheeldon Jr., who was announced when Calgary FC made their announcement that they're a club joining the Canadian Premier League. They also announced that Tommy Wheeldon Jr. would be the new head coach and general manager of the club. Now, just a little bit of background information on him is he is actually from Liverpool, England, and was a defender who played with Swindon Towns, where he started his pro career, before eventually moving in 2002 to the city of Calgary to play for the Storm, which at the time, fun fact, was coached by his father, Tommy Wheeldon Sr. While he was with the Storm too, he was also an academy coach and I believe a director of their summer camps. And then after that, when the Storm folded, he would go on to later join the Calgary Foothills in 2007 as an assistant technical director, and then would get promoted the following year to technical director. And then he worked as a technical director for a bit for them until 2015, when he jumped on as head coach of the Calgary Foothills, which was the same year they joined the Premier Development League. And then, of course, when he's head coach there from 2015 to 2018, he actually took them to 2 PDL finals, including winning this past year's tournament in 2018 against Reading United A.F.C. 4-2. So that was a big win. He also has a bit of experience with Team Canada, as he has a short stint as assistant coach for the Canadian U17 men's national team from 2014 to 2016. Now, the second ever head coach to be hired in the Canadian Premier League didn't happen until late June, when Valor FC in Winnipeg announced Rob Gale as their head coach and general manager. Now, Rob Gale's career, of course, in coaching happened because his playing career was cut a bit short due to injuries, but he did move on once he moved to Winnipeg in 2001, would later through the 2000s be associated with and even run some U.S. Soccer camps. He was the North American director for Fulham for a few years before moving on to be the Canadian national director for the Carleton Athletics Sports Academy. After that, he would join the Manitoba Soccer Association in 2006 before moving on to be an assistant coach for the Canadian men's national team's under-17 team in 2010. Now, while with the under-17 Canadian team, they actually qualified for 2, not 1, but 2 FIFA under-17 World Cups in 2011 and 2013, and would go on to even finish second place in the 2011 CONCACAF U17 Championship and third place in the 2013 tournament. After that, he would go on to work with the under-6. He would be the head coach of the under-16 Team Canada men's team, the under-18 team, and as well as lately he was the under-20 coach before moving on this past summer to Winnipeg's Valor FC team. Now, the third ever head coach announcement was made just a few days after the Rob Gale announcement, and that's when Halifax announced Stephen Hart as their first ever head coach and general manager of the club. So Stephen Hart actually originally played back in the 80s for 4 years in Halifax with the St. Mary's Huskies, and he was of course over in the mid-80s for school and university in Halifax. That's kind of where he first fell in love with the city of Halifax and with the country of Canada. And he was actually a youth sports all-star back in the day, and would later on even come back in the late 90s to coach the St. Mary's Huskies women's team from 1997 to 1999. Stephen Hart would even further his Canadian soccer legacy by coaching Canada at several levels, including he was assistant coach for the U23 team, moving on to that to assistant coach and later head coach of the U17 team. He was a head coach for the U20 team, and even coached the Canadian men's national team several times from 2005 to 2012, including an appearance in the 2007 CONCACAF Gold Cup semifinals. Now, the next coaching announcement would come out of the city of Edmonton in Alberta when they hired Jeff Paulus as their first ever head coach. Now, Jeff Paulus actually started with the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, a college team that he actually coached from 2004 to 2012, and even won the 2011 national championship with. From there, he would move on to, actually during that time where he was there from 2006 to 2011, he also coached with the Canadian, actually coached for the Canadian Soccer Association with the Alberta Prospects too. And then from 2011 to 2017, he served as the assistant coach for FC Edmonton, as well as the technical director as well. All pretty much leading up to his announcement July 4th, 2018, when he was brought on to become the first ever head coach of FC Edmonton in the Canadian Premier League. Now, the fifth coach announced for the Canadian Premier League is actually going to be Jim Brennan, who was announced as the head coach for York 9 back in the middle of summer. Now, Jim Brennan, of course, has a playing career spanning from 1996 to 2010 and has played several times with the Canadian men's national team. And actually during that time, he also played for a bunch of good professional clubs that you might know the names of, like Bristol City, Nottingham Forest, Huddersfield Town, who are currently in the Premier League, Norwich City, Southampton, and of course finishing up his career with Toronto A.F.C. And since retiring, actually, he has been working as the head coach with Toronto FC's U17 club in the academy, before moving on as assistant coach up until 2014. And then after that has been working with Aurora FC in Ontario, before of course coming on board with York 9 when the club announced back in May. And of course now, as of this past summer, is the first ever head coach for York 9 Football Club. The next club to announce their first ever head coach was back in August, when Pacific FC announced Michael Silberbauer as the man that will fill that role. Michael Silberbauer is a Danish player that's coming from Denmark, and or actually from the Swiss league currently, but has played with Denmark from the U17 level all the way to the senior team level, and has actually seen his playing career, which actually wrapped up in 2015. His playing career saw him play with some noteworthy clubs like the Young Boys or FC Copenhagen. He currently is the assistant head coach of FC Luzern from 2016 to about December 2018. He's actually still in that role as assistant coach up until January of 2019, when he'll actually be officially coming over to Vancouver Island to resume his next new job as head coach of Pacific FC. Now, the last ever head coach was announced back on October 1st when Forge FC in Hamilton announced Bobby Smyrniotis. Now, Bobby Smyrniotis played soccer back in college, but was known for actually being an academy coach in 2003 and 2004 with the Greek giants Olympiakos FC. From there, he would move on to actually co-found Sigma FC in the Ontario League back in 2005, and has actually been the head coach of that club from the 2005 all the way up until 2018. Now, Sigma FC, of course, is just a factory of a club that just pumps out some great Canadian talents. And he's actually, Smyrniotis is actually fortunate to be able to be one of the guys that actually, you could say, helped build and develop players that actually play for the Canadian men's national team, like Manjakar James, Kyle Becker, and Kyle Laren, just to name a few. So that was my video this week about the 7 coaches of the Canadian Premier League. I think one thing is for sure that this league is going to definitely give not only young players a chance to play at a pro high Division 1 level, but also coaches. Just looking at these 7 coaches, some of them obviously have that high-end experience, like maybe like a Stephen Hart. Some of them maybe don't, who are still trying to make their way in the game, like a Bobby Smyrniotis or a Michael Silberbauer as a head coach, of course. So that's great about this league, is that's going to give opportunities to players and coaches alike, which is what we want as Canadians. And now, if you want to see more content just like this, of course, please hit that, so maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button, and if you have any ideas about future videos you'd like to see on this channel, please leave it in the comment section below. And until next time, thank you for watching.